so that we can also share it. So, welcome everybody for tonight's event, our very first event of the DueDash Cologne's Founders Bearing Ring. Today on the topic, Angel Investor Secrets, how to get your second meeting with an investor. One of the topics that is probably most relevant to many young entrepreneurs out there who are working on their product, but that want to get to take that next step towards really scaling your product and really get it into the market. Just a few words in general on what DueDash is and what you can expect from the Cologne Founders Bearing Ring going forward. So at DueDash in general, we help startups become investable. This community platform was designed to really bring together founders and experts, among others also investors, from across the globe to actually share the resources, the networks, as well as the knowledge of startup related topics, and thereby help them to really build a business with focus, become investable, and thereby receive the needed funding. For everyone who's not part of our DueDash community platform, feel free to join. It's for free. The majority of the content that's out there is for free. You can network with people from across the globe and learn on all matters of really building your business. Within that platform, you will find in the groups area, there's this DueDash Cologne Founders Bearing Ring. We're already active with DueDash in 17 cities across the world in 8 different countries. And the Cologne Founders Bearing Ring is one of them. So the idea behind this bearing ring is that whereas there's lots of knowledge that can be shared across borders, some of that is still localized. So if you have specific questions, if you want to get in touch with people around you that can help you overcome those barriers of starting your business locally, feel free to join this bearing ring, put in the questions. We are trying our best to onboard all the different players that are needed from that ecosystem for it to really flourish and get you out of there. There's a pitch corner where you can upload your 60-second pitch to become visible to investors. We have a free investment readiness check in place where you can test your investability, get feedback on that. So there's lots of things that you can do on DueDash in general. And we're happy to have you on board for today's session. And in that regard, I would also like to hand the word to our 2 experts from today. I personally had the pleasure to meet them throughout the Founder Institute Pre-Seed Accelerator program that was running here in Cologne, where my co-founder here, Nikhil Madam, was also one of the directors. And both of them have really shared lots and lots of expertise that I myself, but also all my fellow code members could use throughout building their business. So welcome, Uwe, welcome, Ton, to today's meeting. Maybe you guys want to quickly introduce yourself. Maybe you start first, Uwe, give a bit of an insight on you, on your background.
Thank you, Markus. Welcome, everybody. My name is Uwe Bingel. Do you see me? Do you see my video? Okay, fine. Yeah. Let me introduce myself. And first of all, thank you for being, let's say, your contact partner for DueDash, because I'm very interested in this platform, also very interested in the community, and I'm very happy to be here, let's say, mentoring the first session to this evening. To my personal background, I'm 56 years old only, married, happily married, 2 kids. From my professional career, I started, my scientific background is I'm an economist and a mechanical engineer, both simultaneously. And I started as a business consultant within one of the biggest management consultancies in the world, like 1990. Worked all through that. I worked a long time in the media business and in the e-commerce business until the new economy bubble, let's say, exploded. From that time on, I worked as a managing director in medium-sized companies, mostly on the let's say on the edge between, let's say, traditional business and digitalized business models. And after that period, which ended in 2012, I started up as an entrepreneur and as a self-employed consultant, doing transformations for not only medium-sized business, but also for, let's say, DAX corporates, how to move and how to leverage the positive effects that you have in the organization into new business models. And this is the time when, let's say, my my spirit for new startup companies was awakening, and that I'm trying to do, let's say, bring to the public here through this crowd and to other crowds, as Markus described already. Currently, I'm working as a managing director for a cybersecurity company within the Bosch conglomerate. Despite all other businesses within Bosch, we are very, very successful. Even though due to coronavirus, we are not suffering that much. We are suffering, but we are very optimistic about the, let's say, the future development of our business. And we are still growing tremendously, which keeps me very busy. And I'm happy to answer your questions today, this evening, regarding your, let's say, startup ideas and funding ideas that you are carrying with you. I'm handing over now to Ton to introduce himself a little bit. Huh? Hi, Ton.
Thank you, Uwe. Good evening, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Will be a lot of fun starting up a new business and then continue making a lot of profit, of course. A few words to myself. I am a European citizen with a Dutch passport, living in foreign countries for more than half of my life now, with amongst many others like the US and the Middle East, and now in Germany. And I've worked in sales and marketing positions basically my whole life for big companies like Nixdorf, Siemens, DuPont and Nemours, Compare, etc., but also for small and medium-sized companies, always in sales, marketing, managerial positions. My hobby is marketing and sales, apart from rugby, but in a soccer country like Germany, you cannot say that, but I have said it. Coming to the startup business, I'm a founding member of Angel Engine, which is a club of approximately 35 business angels in the Düsseldorf area, and we invest in startups. So we have quite some experience there, and which we'd like to share, of course. If you have any questions, then please ask. And if you're too shy to do it in public, you can always write to me. Or do it via Markus or Angelina. That's me.
Great, thank you both for your introduction here. Both of them also here on DueDash. So if you have any follow-up questions after that meeting or whatever, you want to get in touch, or you have a startup idea and you want to present it to a conglomerate of business angels, then feel free to reach out to both of them. Now, before we go into today's session and give you room to ask all of your questions, Ton want to share just like 2-3 quick slides we can give you kind of a framework for today's session. So Ton, feel free. In the meanwhile, at everybody, if you already have a question at heart that you want to get answered by those two here, directly put them in the chat. Even though we will not be able to directly pick them up, we're going to do so. So the earlier put in your question, the earlier you also get it answered. So Ton, to you.
Thank you. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Which is kind of useful. What does a business angel do? I guess you know they provide capital, but we also, like we say, smart money, which means support, entrepreneurial know-how, and I'm providing our network contacts. I did some investigations, and how many business angels are there altogether, and it's quite astonishing. Those are figures from 2019, and they are on Germany, and there are over 10,000 active business angels in Germany with an investment volume of almost 2.5 billion last year. The average business angel has 7 deals in her or his portfolio, and the average investment is 115,000. To compare it with venture capitalists, they only invested 1.7 billion in 2019. So here you see the importance of talking to, in the first phase, probably a business angel, and in the second or third phase, talking to a VC to boost the growth of your business. And those were basically, I think, the slides I wanted to share with you. And if you have any questions, then please.
That's great. So as you can see, guys, the problem is definitely not that there's not enough business angels out there, but as you're here in that amount of people, it kind of shows that still you're interested in how to get a second meeting with a business angel. So from that perspective, again, it would be great if you just put in your questions into this chat here, then we can pick this question up and then we let it addressed by either Ton or Uwe. Until that's the case, I'm just gonna initialize the very first question in general. So maybe let's start with you, Ton. I'm aware that you get so many pitch decks in a year. Maybe you want to just quickly describe the process on what you do with a pitch deck coming in that's signed into you, how you go about it with your fellow members, and what the process usually looks like on your end.
Right. We receive approximately 300 pitch decks per year, not per week, per year. And to give you an idea, we had our deal flow meeting on Monday, and we discussed something like 12 pitch decks from various companies. And then I always say, you have to present your startup in such a way with your pitch deck that we fall in love with your idea. If your idea is boring, then you know, nobody is going to get interested, because there are so many startups who approach us. So it has to be to the point, attractive. We want to fall in love, and once we have fallen in love, we talk about this. We had a meeting with out of the 35 or 20 of our angels, and a few of them were selected. We had about 3 where we said we want to talk to them, and then we form a group who is interested, 1, 2, 3, 4 people. And then we have a live session with the startup, and then we take it from there. We have seen pitches where the live pitch is terrible because the people are not enthusiastic about their thing. You must show passion, you must show love for your product. You must know everything, even if a guy like me asks stupid questions. And then we will take it from there. So don't be shy, but be realistic.
Right. Thanks for that insight on that overall process here. And I think that would also go back to, there was a Herbert Silkim Kujawa, I hope I pronounced that correctly, already asking, hi, can I get an email to get in touch with someone since I have a startup idea and will like to pitch? Thank you. So once again, you've heard, if you just go on DueDash and you can, for example, find Ton there. So one thing you could do is you could send the pitch deck as described to Ton. They could take it up, evaluate that. And if you can also convince them with your very initial pitch deck, then they're happy to take this up and really get it going. Next up, I would like to take up the question by Sadish, who's asking, we're a life science startup looking for investment to get the product into market. Where should I search for investors? Maybe Uwe, you want to tackle this question as well. Ton already raised his hand, so there's somebody you can send it to. But Uwe, maybe what would you advise Sadish here on how to go about it?
We're talking about who was Sadish? Is okay, yeah. The question is there are many different ways. First of all, you can, let's say, use the regular way. You can shoot your idea into too many channels, which will not listen to you. This is the effect that Ton just described. The other way is you select the market of potential investors and potential business angels by the type of your, let's say, idea, and you should, let's say, target it on these business angels. It's hard to answer that question without knowing something about the concrete idea of the business. Basically, I can recommend you can talk to me, for instance, in order to, let's say, navigate and navigate your idea and whom to target to. You can also target to, you can also talk to Ton in order to do so, but it will be very hard without a precise idea to give you a precise answer to your question. Yeah.
Right. Uwe, maybe one thing I would like to ask here now, at the moment, you both are in that video chat here, right? Normally, founders do not have that access, or like now we have that opportunity to say, hey, you can address Uwe or Ton right away. But if you don't know where to find such investors, where would you go in order to get in touch with investors in first place? Is it pitching events?
That's an easy question. Easy question to answer. Easy question to answer. With if you want to find the ones that Ton just described, where you really get it, that you tease it, where you say, "Wow, this effect you can get only within a community." So business angels within the community, they know each other because they're probably, let's say, competing to each other in many ways when bringing their monies on the market. The same is true for the intermediates, for those who are, let's say, managing those kind of communities. That's why I'm a little bit shy to say this is the right direction to go, but I'm happy to discuss it with Satish, for instance, to find out where the right circle of persons is that to address.
Right. Thanks for that, Uwe. And that's something I think if you have access to one investor, that's always a good start. And then it's always about a warm handoff, not just between business angels and the VC at a later stage in time, but getting a warm intro obviously is always helpful. So try to make use of your network here. Next up, I would like to also take up the question by Hitash. He was asking, if you had your own startup, which is a non-tech, when is the right time really to you to first start going to an angel investor, before or after having some initial traction? Maybe Tom, I would take that question to you. So what would you say as a non-techie startup, when is the right time to send you the pitch deck?
It would be very nice if you already have some traction. And that's of course preferred because it's a proof of concept. You have an MVP and you're developing your products and your business and your clientele from there. But sometimes it is good to do it relatively early, because don't underestimate the time which is necessary to talk and to convince a business angel between the first get together in the sense of a pitch deck, reading a pitch deck or a video conference, until the money is coming in to your startup, is at least 6 months. So the business angel and also the VCs, they expect that in that 6 months period, you will grow, your product will grow, your customer base will grow. So don't do it too late, because then all of a sudden you need the money tomorrow and then you won't get it.
Yes, definitely. Would you say, however, there's also like this, would you agree that usually you only have one chance to send an investor your pitch deck? If you're like, let's say you're going too early, you send it to them, they say, no, that's not relevant. Would you take up a pitch deck half a year later of the same company?
if you don't try, you will never know. Sometimes you switch your idea a little bit, or you focus on another customer segment, and then you have to be open and say, look, we tried customer segment A, it was not good. We now in customer segment B, and it goes much better, and we would like to inform you about that. So maybe that is of interest for you.
Great. Thanks for that insight on that regard. It's good to see, by the way, I see many questions coming in. Don't worry, we'll pick them all up. Sometimes we'll do a different order just to have a thematic correlation here between the questions. I would like to take up actually the question by Fernando, because we were just talking about like accessing also local networks. And he was asking, hi everyone, what role plays having a network to get the first meeting with investors, and how to build that network as a foreigner in Germany? Uwe, maybe yes. To you, what advice would you give to Fernando?
Yeah, I think the network is a network, and a network contains a lot of contacts, but the most relevant information is let's say, the brilliance of your idea and how you are able to communicate your idea. So before you do this, let's say, first approach, especially if you're talking to someone who's not from the community, you should be asking yourself, am I ready, or am I in the position already to describe my product or the service that I want to offer? Because otherwise you will be asked that question, and you will be let's say, routed down that road. You will have to admit that you haven't thought thoroughly enough before you approached an investor. With this investor, no matter if it's a business angel or a venture capital fund, you will not talk again. So that's why I think you cannot come up with an idea and do the first approach. You should think about it. What would a business angel or an investor expect from me? To have it right on hand. You cannot start working at the day you are talking about you want to talk about with your investor. You have to think of it up front. You have to aggregate it, and you have to be able to communicate it in many ways. So for instance, if you're talking to a business angel who is in the community that you are trying to build your business in, you have to be much better prepared than if you're talking to let's say, purely financial interested investor, because this person will not be in the position to ask you all the questions that the community investor will ask you. So that's why you have to distinguish to whom am I talking now? This is the topic that Tom described. Is there a woman or a man, for instance? Yeah, you have to know this up front in order to say what is the mostly expected answer that I have to provide and that I have to prepare for questions to come up with.
I see. Would you say then in that regard that whereas it makes sense to start building an initial contact with investors before you're even ready maybe for fundraising, that however really dressing them and go out and chasing them should only be done once you're ready, because otherwise you burn your grass there?
I think the chasing part is the hardest part, because you will not be able to contact your potential business angel like in a darts tourney when you go to for the bullseye, for instance. This is just a lucky shot that you do. In reality, you're able to present your ideas in a way that it sounds or looks attractive to a potential investor. And if he's not the right one because you are not addressing his portfolio, he's the right one to recommend you to another investor or a business angel who is interested in that field of technology or in that field of service or and so on. So basically, it's the way you present your idea to the person that you're talking to.
Okay. That's absolutely valid what you're bringing into the game here. And I think that especially the problem might be that also sometimes founders do not know what exactly to present to an investor in that regard. And this is also going where Martin is asking, like, is there anything, for example, that you don't want to hear in a pitch? Because now you talked about, it's about what you say to them, but is there like some aspects that you really once you hear that, you're like, this startup is out, I do not consider it any further. Maybe from one of you, from own experiences, maybe where you said, this is something that we cannot tolerate.
Yeah, I have one answer to that. It doesn't matter how big the universe is if your shoes are too small. So basically you have to describe the way you are able to survive within a certain period in order to make it attractive enough to believe in your business idea. And this is the first step you have to do when you want to convince. The second step is the, let's say, attractiveness of your idea, the attractiveness of your product or service, where you want to, let's say, reduce the pain on your customer side. So, but here we are already in the business model where you want to describe to in which, what is your, let's say, USP towards other competitive products in the market. Is it the way you approach your customer? Is it the excellence of your business idea? And this you can only answer if you have understood the problem of your potential customers well enough. Because if you have understood the problems of your potential customers well enough, you are able to describe the solution to that. And the solution is the answer to the question. And this is what the business angel wants to hear, because here he starts believing in your business idea and that you are not only, let's say, bullshitting. Because describing an idea is one thing, but believing in the idea is the other part of the coin. Hmm?
Maybe I can add a few things.
Sure.
What Urs said. What I don't want, what we don't want to hear, is that you don't have a value proposition, that you are not able to explain what is in for a customer, what are the benefits. And the next stupid thing you can say is, well, the product sells itself. That would be, in my long life, the first time that a product sells itself. Maybe if you have water in the middle of the desert, you've been walking for 3 years, then the product, the bottle of water sells itself. I hate the word, we hate the word burn rate of money, which means is like, you know, give me a lot of money, we throw it away. And don't build in your business plan high salaries that from day one the founders or the CEOs and the CTOs and etc. and CMOs give themselves big salaries, and also big company cars. Those are definitely no's, because then the people say, look, I'm not going to pay your salary or fund your big BMW or whatever car you are putting in. So those are a few additional don'ts, please.
Thanks for both of your insights. It really sounds, Ton, like you've had those coming in more than once already, the way you're emotional about that. So
do you have an hour?
I mean, it's always good to learn from successes of startups, but it's also good, as we could see, to learn from the failures, of the don'ts, of the no's that you're supposed to do.
You only learn from failures.
That's true. It's both that can really guide you a good picture here. We have a couple of questions in, and again, we come back to all of them from Hitesh and Sunil and Sunit as well. Just in that regard, I think the best question that fits in here at the moment is, Sunil actually asked, because we were talking, Uber, you were also targeting a bit like if your shoes are too small, which also goes back a bit to the market that you're addressing, the Tam Sum Sum, the one that you can actually address. So what would you say, what's the typical average return on investment of an angel investor, including positive and non-positive investments retrospectively? So obviously betting, investing in early stage startups is like placing bets in some way. So what do you kind of expect, or what do you want to start up? What potential return on investment do you see, or do you need to see in order to also place that bet on those startups?
Ton, are you going to start, or do you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically all kind of investments of that kind should be higher than what you get on the regular capital market. So basically it's the first idea. Secondly, you need to know what risk is involved when spending the money for the investment. And this goes along with the words which John just said regarding company cars and salaries of other people. No one is going to invest in you because of your personality. It's only the idea of your business that is worth the money that to spend in. So no business angel is spending money in individual. It's just a business idea. So the business idea has to be transparent. It has to be easy to understand, and it has to be self-explanatory when it comes to how you want to make money with that business idea. And if this is the first in your first approach with a business angel, I think it's hard to get. It's not hard to get a second session with a business angel, because he's getting interested. He wants to follow your ideas, and he wants to follow and to discuss with you how to go further. But if you do this don'ts that Tom described, he's probably not going to talk to you again after the first meeting. Yeah?
Tom,
Yeah,
would you like to add something?
maybe a few additions. We have in our club of business angels a person who is looking after a kind of a family office. So he wants to make more money as a return on investment than the bank. So he's between 5 and 10%. There are a couple of other people who have a certain business and they're looking for startups to extend their business. And there are quite a few who say, look, I have some money in the pocket, go bring it to the bank doesn't help. So I would like to share my money and experience and network with people who have good ideas. So it's always a mix, and that brings me to the advice I would like to give. Make sure you know your investor. Right? Mm-hmm. If you talk to Mr. So-and-so, look in the internet. Mr. Google knows a lot. And you can find him in LinkedIn, in other Xing and other networks. So you can look a little bit what kind of a person is that. And if the person is a tennis player or a golf player, don't talk about football as a starter. Well, it's nice to talk about football. Have you heard that Germany won from Turkey? He said, no. Right. Germany did not play a tennis match against Turkey. So dig into the investor, because if you come, it's like selling something to your customer. You have to know your customer, and your customer is.
Absolutely, Tom, I think you have a very valid point here, and that goes back to actually the event that we had, our last global DueDash AMA event on pitching to investors. Where we had Martin Barnes, who's also on this Zoom call today, and another expert on pitch decks, James Church on there. And we also discussed this topic of knowing your audience is so important, because every pitch you do, it's a different pitch, whether you pitch to a customer, an investor, to a partner, or whomever, and you have to adapt your pitch to that. So thanks for stressing this here, Tom, because I think that's one thing that many people forget about, like to really identify what has the investor done before that. Maybe I would like to take up the question from Hitesh here before we go also into the more international questions that came in as well, because now we have talked about like, how do you identify the no's of a startup? On the other hand, if you're a founder, how do you identify the right investor from the wrong investor? Like, how do you know who's the fitting investor for you and who shouldn't you approach for getting investments? Maybe, Tom, I first hand this question to you.
Thank you. In rugby, they call this a hospital pass. So they're handing over the ball and you know you're going to, which doesn't matter because we used to it. You don't know. First of all, you don't know. But again, it's back to research of the investor. So try to find out what kind of a person it is, he or she is. Why does she or he invest? And if you get, it's like also falling in love. You have a good interaction as a person, and an investment from a business angel in a startup, it's also a matter of trust. If you don't feel good connection, good vibes, like I said, it's like falling in love. If you don't feel these vibes, then think about it. If he or she asks for too many shares and said, oh, I want to have 45% of your company right from the beginning, walk away, because after the first round, there is nothing left if you need more money. So too many shares and trust that has to be, and you have, did you invest in other startups? And if he or she then says, yes, invest and then that, talk to them, the other in startups, and say, what are the experiences with these investors? That's what I would like to say.
Great. Do you want to add something to that, Uwe, or?
Yes, I want to add
Okay.
that because in my last part, I pointed out that the investor is not investing in the person; he's investing in the business idea. I may stay with that, but the deal can only be closed if that what Ton is just addressed is really put on the table. You have to trust your investor, and that goes along with how deep is his breath, how long will he be with you, and is he really staying with you even let's say in tough times. And this you will only find out not by the investor, you will find out through his community or through his partners. Yeah, because I experienced it myself quite a couple of times, that investors, they are pretending to be like a godfather. They deal with you as let's say Gordon Geckos and investment bankers when things are getting tougher, and those you don't want to have, because they sell your heart by the end of the day in order to get out of the deal with a black zero basically. This is what you have to make sure. This is something that is a very personal topic. You cannot assess that. Only you cannot assess that via a model. You have to assess that via the community and the business partners of the angel investor. There's no other way, because it may be documented in the big cases, but in all other cases, it's only words of mouth by the end of the day.
Yeah.
This is the point that you have to reach in order to segregate the boys from the girls, or the men from the boys. In other words, say, is this someone who is going with me in my business idea through rough times? Can I imagine with him discussing this and that? If the answer is yes, then it's a partner for you. And if the answer is no, then you should stay away from this business investor, this business angel.
All right. Yeah. I mean, that's I think that the aspect of trust that you both now pointed out is very, very crucial, not just in the very first business angel phase, where it's even more important because at this point in time, there's not as much data available about a startup. So you have to also have that trust in the founder, but also vice versa into the investor to take you the full route. And trust, by the way, is always built over a period of time and through interaction. So the more you engage with the investors, the more transparent you are with the investors, the better you can actually also build that trust and confidence in your startup. So thanks for stressing this point here as well. I know that there's a few questions here that could still fit in that regard. I just want to pick up two questions which were more holistically seen also from other parts in the world. So the one is from Atul, actually. He addressed that question to Uwe, even though from what I know from you two guys, I'm not sure whether Ton could actually be more targeted for that question. Is Atul asked, what's the synergy you see between European startups, investors, and Silicon Valley entrepreneurs? I'm not sure. Maybe Uwe, I mean, feel free to take it up.
I agree with you. I have no experience in the Silicon Valley, but I have experience with people who have worked in the Silicon Valley. But I'm not a representative helping you to find the right business angels in the Silicon Valley. I may give you contacts, but it may not be the right ones. With regard to that, sorry, I have to say I have to pass. maybe Ton has some more ideas on that question.
What synergy do you see, Ton, then between European startups investors and Silicon Valley entrepreneurs?
Apart from the fact that I had two sales offices in California, one in San Francisco and one in Los Angeles, I worked for a startup and we went to Silicon Valley to talk to people, investors there. But at the moment, to be quite honest, the only synergies is drinking good Californian wines. So I see no, maybe for big investments, but so far those are so different cultures that it's very difficult to bring them together.
Can I ask this question? This Atul worded
Yes.
differently.
Go ahead.
So my question is about globalization, because currently a company started in India or Brazil or Germany or wherever, most companies, startups would like to be global. So they would like to have the whole world as a market. So from that perspective, given California is the biggest economy in the world alone, I think is the largest economy as a state. So do you still see, from a growth and expansion perspective, it might make sense, doesn't matter whether you started in Germany or whether you started in India, to have a presence in Silicon Valley? And I think you rightly said that you have offices in Silicon Valley and LA. So it makes sense from a growth perspective to have Silicon Valley. Do you agree?
Not only the growth perspective, you have to also look at it from a regulatory topic, because you know that data protection and data security law is very strict in the European side, where it is less strict, or less, let's say, with less consequences on the US side. So depending on your business idea, I would recommend to go in that area. But regarding, but this is not true for all business ideas. It depends on your business model and what you want to bring on to the market. For instance, or if you go to a let's say pharmaceutical health device or the supplies, it's probably much better recommended to go in the Swiss German border to discuss with people, even potential business angels, than to go to anywhere in the United States, because they're just not developed to that level. Yeah. So basically, it depends on your business idea, where your community is located. I would not make it only dependent on the size of the market that you want to address. I would rather make it dependent on the hurdles that you have to take in order to get the idea on the market. Yeah. This might be lower in the US than in Germany, in Europe for some ideas, but it might be helpful to address the right community in Europe easier than in the US.
Yeah, and there's two things I think that would be interesting to add here. I mean, from a data standpoint, obviously, the California data security law is nowadays at par pretty much with the GDPR compliance that we have here in Germany. So we're getting a bit more of a consistency here. Another thing, I mean, and this is what I can share as an experience by being part of that platform, by being in touch with investors so closely now, is that one of the huge issues nowadays that investors are facing is that there are so many people approaching them to say, hey, you're an investor, I want your money. Too many founders still think investors are only there to give you money. What is highly, highly important at this point in time, and this goes back to what both of them said here, is looking, for example, for a synergy. Obviously, if you're coming out of Europe and you're targeting the US market, it makes sense to look for strategic investors there. Always keep in mind that a VC that is investing in you wants to have you in that Tesla distance, which is kind of like the distance of one battery of a Tesla car, in order for them to also have that power to help you forward. So that being said, if you are actually targeting another part of the world, like Asia or maybe Africa, looking in that area to find some VCs there could help you a lot more, even though the investors from the US might be a bit more sophisticated as well. So it's really a strategic question that we have here to be answered. Taking this up, also that international approach, Sunit was also asking, that they're developing a great e-commerce marketplace in India. So now we're on the other side of the world. We're curious to know how we can raise some money from an angel investor and also find a good mentor. Maybe, would you say, I would give that question to Tom for the moment, that angel investor themselves could be a good mentor at the same time with all their expertise? Would you say they need two opportunities, or could they also get it in one?
Few remarks. If you take a circle of around 200 kilometers around Cologne or Düsseldorf, where I live, it is the second, third biggest economic area of the world. So don't think that Silicon Valley is so big. Secondly, I have been responsible for sales and marketing for products and services in 60 countries, one company. All business is local, and you cannot have it organized in a very central way. You have to have your local people, local know-how, because customers are different, whether it's B2B or B2C. And if you have a lot of experience in e-commerce here in Germany, I'm 199% sure it will work in a different way in India. So I have no idea how it will work. I personally won't invest, and my colleagues neither, in a country with another culture, which we don't know, and which is not not good, or is worse or better. You have to have the local business feeling, which we don't have. So as an investor and a mentor, you cannot help. I cannot help. All business is local. And startups also have physical products. It's not only platform, software as a service. Many have non-software products.
I have an opinion on this as well. Thanks, Ton. If you would ask me, am I interested in becoming a business angel for Indian investment in a retail business? I would say no. If you ask me as a mentor, would you recommend to start up a retail business, an online retail business in India? I would definitely say absolutely.
Yes.
You are overdue already. You should have had this idea 5 years ago, because India is probably the biggest and fastest growing community within the next 100 years. If you don't make mistakes on your way, this is a win-win situation for both of you, the market and for you as a provider. The question is how to get the right, let's say, contact partner. Sorry, I cannot help on this side. But I agree with Ton. You need to understand the market principles and the market rules in order to become an investor, but B, also a good mentor. This is of no help if you talk to people who don't understand the market situation. They will not able to help you. Only from a financial point of view, because the financial rules all over the world are the same.
Right. Yeah, I mean, definitely. This also, once again, goes back to that distance, right? In order to really help a startup in a specific region, also, it's very important to be there, to know that market, and really be able to help with networks and all that. There is another question that came in also in regards to a change of the market. So we're not directly talking about like the global market itself, but Hitesh asked that nowadays there's an increasing interest towards more environmentally sustainable companies, for example, for B Corps. Is the mindset from your perspective of an investor also changing towards getting probably lesser returns towards doing something socially good? So we talked about the return on investment earlier. Maybe Uwe, I'll pipe that question back to you in that regard. What would you say?
I take that very happily. I take that yes, because I have the experience exactly in this field. I know a big family in Spain, billionaires actually, invested in lots of retail shops. They wanted to bring in this neutral, let's say, economically neutral idea via their private money. but their expectations when investing their money, and as I experienced personally, has exactly the same, let's say, levels and professionality as they do their business, as they manage their business. So I would say the expectations with the idea and a lower expectations in terms of performance, this is no-go decision. I wouldn't say so. This will not happen. This will not be successful. But if you are able to provide an idea which helps someone who's interested to diversify in his, let's say, existing business, or invest his private money in ideas that they are really in love with, and you provide the idea, yes, this is an option to go.
So at least, Uwe, from what I understood from you, you still need to see that triple bottom line in order for at least the sustainable business to go further, and not just in a social impact business, at least as an early stage investor, from your perspective here.
I've never met someone who's giving up profit expectations only because to become green. No?
Right. But it looks good also on your portfolio if you have a green investment.
Yes,
Just
absolutely.
on the German version of the Shark Tank, there's with Nico Rosberg, Formula One racer. He, for example, is an investor just focusing on startups that have that green impact. However, still, when you listen to what he says, he's still looking at a return on investment independent from that. However, it might not need to be as high as for other businesses, but at least there needs to be some outlook, obviously, for them. Maybe I would take up another question that is not targeted directly at social environmental startups, but also at other players in the market. Tom, for you maybe. Harish was asking, don't you think it's high time that also financial institutions like banks look at options for investing in startups? Because he heard some banks already doing that. Do you feel, Tom, there's competition out there by banks for you as a business angel?
In Germany, they say "jein," which means a kind of yes and no. I know, and we're amongst each other, and nobody tells any secret that the federal bank, the NRW bank here, the Bank of North Rhine-Westphalia, is setting up a joint venture with a bank in the Netherlands and also in Belgium for doing joint investment in startups and growing companies. So we are facing, not yet as we speak, but in the next couple of months, we will face competition from banks. Mm-hmm. That is for sure, because how do you make money? From your bank account, the few hundred euros we're earning and putting in a bank account. If they lend money to companies, they don't get a big return on it. So they're looking for new opportunities. New competition, yes, from banks.
It's a challenge for the business and for the business angels, but it's also a challenge for the banks how to organize this, because their current business, or their, let's say, conventional business is completely differently set up. You know, it's a difference if you let's say trade jewelry in a mass market, or if you trade jewelry in a, let's say, very exclusive market. And banks, they are not used to trade jewelry in a very exclusive market. So that's what they have to learn. That's why, yes, there might be a competition, and the motivation is very clear, because they have to, let's say, invest their money that they hold in investments that give more return on investment than the assets that they currently have on their books. So this is the motivation behind it. The motivation is not to create a competition for business angels.
No, right. And let's not forget, banks know nothing about business. They only know about money, their money. So they cannot help you with your business in any way, because they haven't got the know-how, like I have no know-how from the bank business.
Which means they have no sensitivity for these weak points of your presentation as well. They will. Right. It's like sending signals with no antenna on the other side. So basically, you may talk to banks. Yes, they may hear you. but you will not get to that point where you address the attention of these people.
Yeah. It's one of the challenges. I mean, it's something similar you can see also with young entrepreneurs coming out of university, having as a mentor like a professor from a university that has never been in the startup or investment business, and having such people as a mentor who don't have that real world entrepreneurship understanding is always a struggle if you really want to take the next step. And the same thing happens if you get investments from such players that can't, because banks in that case really just provide you the money. There is not the whole value that a business angel can provide you on top, also giving you new introductions to other business angels, VCs, etc. As we just mentioned, VCs here now as well in that regard, and who can invest in what. We have 4 questions that I would just like to address, and then we can close the session for today. And thanks everyone, by the way, for all of your questions. If there's any more questions you have, feel free to post them on DueDash, get in touch with them through DueDash as well. But for the moment, I would just like to take up the question by Marvin. In which startup stage you would rather search for business angels and in which for VCs? Can it be separated anyhow? I think that would be a quick answer by one of you guys. Uwe, you're shaking your head, so I'll just give that to you.
No, you cannot separate this, because basically the thinking behind the investments is the same for a business angel as it is for a venture capitalist. The KPIs that they look for are the same KPIs that both are looking for. It's just the dimension and the phase of your investment when you get, let's say, a business angel convinced, or when you get a venture capitalist convinced. I'm 100% sure that both play the same kind of rules in their business. It's just a phase of your investment and the dimension of your funding that is needed, which differs. Nothing else differs.
Great. Thanks, Uwe, for the answer here. I mean, obviously, usually it's preferable if you first start with the business angels and then you start going into the VC space, because VCs also have their schedules in place. Sometimes they don't even allow to invest once your product's not even out there. And talking about products not being out there, which was we're kind of referring to, it depends on the stage where you're at, whom you address. Hussam was also asking, I probably put both of the questions together by Hussam and Fernando. Hussam was asking, I have an MVP, a web portal and a mobile application, and started testing my platform with hundreds of users. First of all, that's very good that you've already went into that MVP testing phase. Now he's asking, I'm looking for investors. Where should I go first? And then I would just attach the question by Fernando on top, because he said, is it better to approach investors individually on LinkedIn or Sing, or through business angels organizations? Maybe both of them being tucked together, Ton. What advice would you give to Hussam with his MVP approaching investors, and maybe directly how and where to approach that investor now?
I have a slight preference for going through a business angel organization, because then you can kind of filter what kind of a business angel you're looking for. And LinkedIn is a possibility, but you don't know really. So use all sources. There is not one way. There's not one road leading to Rome. There are many different possibilities to do. So use them all. Try to use them all. I would start with the business angel organization. Through me, you can address 35 business angels. I have good connections to the Netherlands. I know quite a few VCs. And there are business angel organizations in the Netherlands, in Europe, with thousands of business angels. And you can start there and looking for the best fit. There is not an aspirin which solves all diseases or cures all diseases.
Yeah, thanks also for that, Ton. So as you heard, he would recommend you not maybe through that direct cold LinkedIn approach, but rather directly approach like a large organization. I know from Ton personally as well that they have, especially if you're not sure what the investor usually invests in, which however would be good to know before you pitch to him, is the advantage of such business angel networks is also, as I know from Ton's explanations, that you have a diverse set of investors that usually invest or have an expertise in different areas, industries as well. So as long as there is one person understanding your business, he can convince other business angels to follow. And you might have a chance not just to get a very small investment by one person, but also through a syndicate of business angels here to get an even greater investment still from one kind of coherent group in that regard. Am I right here, Ton?
Absolutely, absolutely. Our members come from various industries, various nationalities, and we have one doctor, a female doctor, in our membership. And if we talk about biotech, I'm not the right person to talk to, but she is. And that's the advantage of business angels. Also a disadvantage. You have VC corporations who are specialized in certain things. If you find those that are ones who are specialized in biotech, then go to that VC.
Great. Thanks also for that add-on here, Tom. Last but not least, the final question before we close today's session is coming from Sunil. He's asking, and actually it could also be that after that session, you could also go to Martin Barnes once again, who's in that chat here as well. He can help a lot on pitching and also partially to pitching to investors, because Sunil is asking, seeking for actionable advice to the end of that session. What would a promising pitch deck include, and ideally, how long is it? So we were talking about how to get the SEC meeting. Many founders tend to really overfill their very first pitch deck. Maybe both of you want to share one thing. I know Ton has this saying of a 40-year-old girl that needs to understand it. Maybe Ton, you first, and then Uwe, you can close this off here as well.
Well, again, depends. If you are sending a pitch to a business angel group like ourselves, I would limit it to approximately 20 slides. And you have to fit everything in, the most important things into that. On Monday, somebody sent us 76 slides. And can you imagine that 35 people have to read 76 slides? I calculated it takes about a week's work altogether. And it's a very interesting product. So again, who is your customer? If he or she is sitting in front of you and you can ask how much time do you have, then if he or she says it's half an hour, you know 20 slides is the max. If he or she says it's an hour, you know you can at least double it and have some time for discussion. So we of course have a list of what should be in a presentation, and I'm glad to share that with you. The same with the business plan, etc. But every business is a little bit different, so there's not one size fits all. Who's your customer? If your customer is a techie, give a technical presentation. I always say, to me, you have to present to a 14-year-old child, because I know nothing about the business, and don't use any slang or abbreviations which might be common in your business. So, few tips.
Thanks, Tom, for those final words on your end. Uwe, you want to add
I
something?
can just underline almost every sentence that Ton said, because you have to know to whom you are addressing your, let's say, your peer, whom you want to convince on the idea. And it's like falling in love, basically. Do you really need to live 10 years with a potential partner to find out if it's the right one or not? Or do you fall in love at first sight? And this is exactly the attractiveness that you need to present when meeting a business angel first sight. for the first time. And this, I'm not saying you have to, let's say, present yourself as a potential partner, but you have to present your business model in a way that it's understandable. Coming back to the 14-year-old child. On the other hand, it's not only the easy language that you use, it's the language that can be understood by everybody. Because you are, the people you are addressing are not necessarily specialists in the field that you are presenting your idea in. And that's why you have to address it to the unknown third party, basically, to make them understand your idea. And this is most of the, Tom described it with abbreviations. The more technical your idea is, the harder it is to present it in that way. Unless you are choosing your community, you're limiting the range of your community up front, and you're addressing addressing your ideas to specialists. So it's hard to do a one cut for all. You have to specialize and maybe through a discussion find out to whom are you talking and what is the depth of your communication that you want to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe just to remember, today's topic was on how to get a second meeting with an investor, all that technical aspects. And I just saw the last question coming in by Jan, and I'm just going to take it up like that. Also on software also, I mean, it's going into a different direction, but especially if people have like complex products, don't try to put everything, the details of your technology into your very first pitch, because the very first pitch in the end is just about, hey, attracting the investors to want to know more about you, to be curious about what you actually do. And then in the second, in the third, in the fourth meeting, you can go deeper into your technology aspects, you can go deeper into your financials, and all those areas, they are part of the due diligence process with which we are also gonna optimize with the investability platform that is in development right now, because this community platform here is about helping startups to get to the point of investability, connecting them with the right type of people. So people like Uwe and Ton today, whom I would really like to thank you for today's presence, for sharing your insights with the community here. That was very much appreciated. For everything else, guys, feel free to join our DueDash community. There's an investment readiness check out there that you can do. I just posted the link here as well. So if you're in fundraising mode and you want to get feedback on your investment readiness, we provide that for free. Just go through that onboarding process and we deliver you diagnostics on that. If you want to become visible to investors, again, there is 60-second pitch corners or pitch corners in the local founders bearing rings. Find a local founders bearing ring nearby. If you're from Cologne, feel free to share your 60-second pitch in there. And then investors like Uwe and Ton could also find you, get awareness about you, become curious, and maybe you get your second meeting through that, even though you've never had a first meeting before, because they just saw you pitching and saw you through that area. So that being said, thanks everybody for joining tonight's event. Thanks Uwe, thanks Ton, and also Angelina here, who's our new volunteer for the Cologne Founders Bearing Ring. So if there's anything else, feel free to shoot your messages on DueDash, and see you next time. So have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you, Ton.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Uwe.
Good seeing
Uwe,
you.
I'm gonna, before you go, Uwe, I'm gonna take you up on your Spanish connections of investors. So we're gonna deal with it separately.
All righty.
All right, Ton. Thank you so much, and you
Bye,
guys have a
everybody.
great evening.
Yes,
ahead.
bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.